Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. This is my latest essay. It's called No One Listens to Me. Perhaps none of my views are worth considering. What do you think? I want to start with New Israel. Nothing could have been more foolish than for the United Nations to put Israel where it did, a sliver of desert surrounded by massively larger, millennia-long enemies sworn to the destruction of Jews. The result has been Israel's overreaction to millennia of anti-Semitism, including the Holocaust, followed by decades of Arab rockets, terrorism, the Palestinians electing and overwhelmingly supporting Hamas, which by charter is sworn to destroy the Jews of Israel. Rather than the U.S. spending yet more billions to arm Israel, which will never suppress the hatred and violence, it should cede an Israel-sized sliver of the massive forest land north of New York City, which is home to the largest concentration of Jews, 3 times as many as live in Jerusalem. Israeli Jews should be given the option to relocate to what I'm calling New Israel, including financial help if needed, but in 5 years, all of Israel, the Jews' biblical right notwithstanding, would be a Palestinian state. For more on my ideas of New Israel, just click on New Israel and my name, Nemko, N-E-M-K-O, and you'll find it. Next idea, the unbelievably bad education system. Despite spending among the most in the world per capita on education, U.S. student scores are, among developed nations, near the bottom. Teachers' SAT scores, among the lowest of all professions. CBS rated education, quote, the easiest major. And public school teachers get tenure after just 2 or 3 years and almost always retain their tenure, even if they burn out. The EduBlob, that's my phrase for the incredibly large, often contradictory education bureaucracy, imposes so many regulations, from district regulations through state regulations and federal regulations, that are costly, strangling of freedom for teachers, and likely far worse uses of money and effort than if 90% of the money and effort were directed into the classroom. We should resist the teachers' union's Leviathan power to squash innovation. They're even trying to crush charter schools. For example, my favorite idea for innovation, reinventing education, is super courses. Imagine that instead of the full range of teachers you could get, from terrific to terrible, all students, rich and poor, from Alabama to Zululand, could online get a world-best AI-assisted teacher with instruction completely individualized and available in all languages. I've proposed super courses to a number of major education leaders, and all of them agree it's worthy, yet it has been squashed. To read more about super courses, search on the term super courses, and again my last name, N-E-M-K-O, and you'll find it. How we select our political leaders is absurd. Most highly competent ethical people choose not to run for office. What such person would, as is required in the current system, would they descend to non-stop pressing flesh to raise big bucks and needing to mislead or even lie to the public and the media? Instead, we should have what I have coined select, don't elect. Here's how it would work. Like stock index funds, mutual funds, ETFs, our legislators would be selected passively. For example, the teacher of the year, the most cited scientist of the year, cop of the year, a few top students, plus a small percentage of people at random to ensure ideological diversity. Those legislatures would vote to select their CEO, their mayor, their governor, or president. More effective altruism. Today's charity fad is so-called effective altruism. Alas, it is far less effective than it should be and could be. It's merely a variant of the Christian theme, give to the least among us. But as every battlefield medic knows, you don't necessarily give limited resources to the sickest, who may well die anyway, but to people with greater potential to get better. Here is a more politically correct analogy. Imagine you own 10 pieces of land and had put a solar energy collector on each. You've saved up and finally can afford to put an 11th collector on one of those pieces of land. You'd of course put it on the land that generated the most solar energy. Yet the, quote, effective altruism movement urges giving to low-yield pieces of land, quote unquote. An example of more effective altruism would be to fund a mentorship program for low-income, gifted kids, whose great potential to improve humankind would largely go unrealized. Materialism is silly. People with half a brain think less of those who spend more on status than the quality justifies. Luxmobiles, designer-label colleges, designer-label clothing, frou-frou restaurants that taste worse than locals' low-key favorites. A corollary is expensive travel. If a pleasure meter were attached to travelers' brains, considering the costs and travel hassles, most of them would be happier making a day trip or just hanging out at home. Perhaps worst of all, materialism pushes many people into careers they do mainly for the money, rather than something they would enjoy more and or be more contributory with. For example, bond trading or enterprise sales rather than a creative career. Overscheduling children. We're mainly a product of our genes, our early parenting, and our peers. Filling children's after-school time with activities short-circuits their all-too temporary freedom to play, to breathe, unstructured. I especially shake my head at parents who make their child take music lessons, forcing them to laboriously translate arcane squiggles into their fingers. They do that even when the child shows little talent and less interest. The wise parent only moderately schedules their child and chooses activities that build on the child's natural strengths. Work-life balance is an overgeneralized goal. Yes, if you're fungible, for example a mediocre janitor, it's wise to strive for work-life balance. But if you're quite good at what you do, and you're spending work week hours 40 through 60 that would do good and give you pleasure, it's often wise to forego work-life balance. Fie on those who would call people who work long hours workaholic, evoking the comparison with alcoholics. We hire stupidly. We use tools that poorly predict how well a candidate would do on the job. We screen using resumes, which are notorious for containing creative writing, and often are written by hired guns called resume writers. That's no more ethical than an applicant to college hiring someone to write their application essay. We rely on interviews, which are coachable, and weak candidates are more likely to spring for a hired gun to craft reassuring but at best incomplete answers to questions such as, why have you been unemployed so long? We validate our poorly chosen candidate using references, but even miscreants can usually dredge up positive references if only their friends who pretend to be their former employer and gush, oh, John was a wonderful employee. Good hiring reduces to using trusted referrals from your pool of applicants and then evaluating them using simulations of the job's common but difficult tasks. Marriage is obsolete. In an era of 50% divorce, and many more couples schlepping through life in fear of divorce's often extended, painful, and expensive process, it's absurd to proclaim before friends, family, and maybe God, in sickness and in health, for richer and for poorer, until death do us part. At most, we should have renewable term marriages, a 1 to 5 year agreement on the nature of the relationship. Marijuana is worse than a second alcohol. For a decade now, the evidence mounts that marijuana is dangerous. Just Google marijuana dangers, you'll see, from cancers to car accidents. Yet in government's endless avariciousness for our money and taxes, they've made it legal. If government cared about us, or even the vaunted poor it claims to prioritize, it would ban marijuana. Admittedly, like gun control, that would only reduce, not eliminate the devastation. But something is better than nothing. The perfect is the enemy of the good. The need to weigh the cost-benefit of attempting to cool the planet. The probability of long-term success of even the proposed radical efforts to cool the planet are dwarfed by the costs. For example, the pain imposed on the public by forcing people out of their cars and into the inevitably inadequate and noisier mass transit. Then there's the opportunity cost of what the trillions, yes, trillions of dollars worldwide could be spent on, from eradicating hunger and preventable disease in developing nations to an all-out assault on cancer which devastates billions of us. Want to invest in new transportation that doesn't keep people in strangling traffic or in deeply problematic mass transit? Invest in developing clean energy flying cars. That would create countless new lanes without building roads, and people have the freedom to go where and whenever they want with minimal pollution. The media is a big part of the problem. I grew up in the age of Walter Cronkite journalism. While we all have biases, the goal was to present the full range of responsibly held ideas. Now, in part by self-selection into the field of journalism, exacerbated by journalism schools training, which is and woke hiring practices, many, if not most, mainstream media people have abandoned the Walter Cronkite School in favor of activist journalism. Despite having lived mainly in journalists' like-minded bubble, too many in both news and entertainment media have the hubris to believe they should use their prodigious rhetorical wiles to manipulate their audiences into believing they're being fair, when in actuality they're too often trying to brainwash into their often inadequately considered and usually leftist positions. They use their iron fists to impose the 3 C's on us, to impose their bidding: censure, censor, and cancel. Yes, some wisdom derives from the left, but much resides across the ideological matrix. While a pipe dream, I wish that society's mind molders, the schools, the colleges, and especially the wildly influential media, would select ideologically diverse over just melanin diverse people and encourage them to, like C-SPAN, AllSides.com, and Debate Squared, give fair voice to responsibly derived ideas both inside and outside the journalist's ideological bubble. The primacy of merit. My most deeply held belief is the primacy of merit. All other considerations should pale. For example, whatever benefits accrue from putting a thumb on the selection scale are dwarfed by the decreased quality and quantity of everything from our customer care to our medical care. Not to mention that any time a person of a preferred demographic gets hired, there is wondering whether the person got there on the merit or not. Corollary? We should be more judgmental rather than today's au courant value-void acceptance of all. In a not distant past, we venerated judgment, discernment, curation. Now, in our acceleratingly anti-merit society, we denigrate merit in favor of such long-term deleterious values as all in, everyone, and other slogans and policies inimical to merit. So, should I just realize that the wisdom of today's crowds has deemed my ideas worthy of the 3 C's, censure, censor, and cancel, and so I should just slink away as just another out-of-step old man? In any event, that essay is called No One Listens to Me. As usual, I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. And certainly would welcome you taking a look at any of my 32 books. Perhaps most relevant to this book is my book, A Dose of Reality, but all 32 are on Amazon. Just go there and search on my name, Marty Nemko, N-E-M-K-O, and you will find more than you can stomach. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.